Hello, Johnny from Eurogamer here, and recently I spoke with David Housden. Now, you might not know that name off the top of your head, but chances are you're familiar with his work. David is a composer best known for doing the music on Mike Bithel's Thomas Was Alone and on the more recent Volume. I interviewed him about his work recently and was going to intersperse his answers with my own thoughts, but to be honest, he's just really nice and interesting, so I did everyone a favour and cut myself out of the equation. So without any further ado, here's David Housden on composing game music, working with Mike Bithel, and hitting suits of armour with chopsticks.
I think I've got quite a unique relationship with Mike, and I'm fully aware of how fortunate I am to be able to work with someone who is gives me so much creative freedom and trusts me to just kind of leave me to it and know that I'll deliver the goods for him. I suppose I maybe earned that trust with our work together on Thomas Was Alone, but I don't take it for granted at all. At the beginning, he kind of gave me all of these musical influences and the direction that he saw the game going, and I think it was probably quite sensible. I mean, looking back, it's what I should maybe have considered doing and what most people would have done when confronted with a game which is essentially about the inner workings of a computer and the personalities of AI within said mainframe. I think a more obvious approach would have been to do a real kind of synth-heavy electronic-based score, and that's maybe what I should have done. But I didn't really like any of the bands or influences that he sent me. I just thought, you know what, if I try and give him like my version of this, it's just going to feel like I'm, swimming upstream the entire time. And so I tried to adapt Thomas into something that I knew and something that I felt, which happened to be more organic instrumentation and pianos and strings. And I thought, oh shit, I better actually drop in some chiptune and stuff in here as well, just to make sure it does actually fit the game. At least that was initially how it began, and then sort of once I grew into my own skin a bit more, I really embraced that side of things. And as the music progresses, you can actually hear me get more experimentative with that kind of side of the production and less reliant on the strings and the piano. And it was good personal growth for sure. Definitely added another string to my bow as a musician. I wouldn't say it altered our relationship, but it definitely altered my working method and my approach. And it was a big loss of ego to come from being one of the stars of the show to playing, admittedly, a much more supportive role this time. But that's because the game is so much more ambitious. It's almost like not any music needed to fill a hole with Thomas Was Alone, because it's still a great game in its own right. But there was a lot more space there for the music to really play a part. And usually you don't have that kind of luxury when you're working on titles. Luckily we've progressed a bit further from, just stay underneath everything and very much in the background and don't ever come to the forefront. But at the same time, if you're doing your job properly, it's not about you. You shouldn't be distracting the player away from what's going on. You should be enhancing their experience and, as you rightly said, supporting what's actually going on. So it was, a much more, what I imagine is a much more typical kind of working environment when producing music for a game. I think maybe there was a bit of trial and error at the beginning, like sometimes I was maybe writing a bit too, music which was a bit too much in the forefront and needed to take a bit of a step back. I went out on a limb to purposefully avoid anything that could possibly be compared to Harry Gregson Williams' work on any of the MGS titles, because it was the first thing everyone was saying on their first impressions on a visual level, which I understand, but it's also such a huge shame because Volume has so much more to it than those VR missions, and I really wanted to try and do something musically which would help create a separate identity for the game and very much let it be seen in its own right. It's very difficult to write stealth music without referencing Metal Gear Solid. It's sort of akin to trying to write pirate music without referencing the score for Pirates of the Caribbean. It's so defining in itself. So rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, I sort of looked at ways that I could maybe present these traditional concepts of what one would expect to hear from this kind of music in a slightly different way. And one way of doing that was to try and give everything a real organic quality, because it's, you've got these quite cold, harsh environments in the game. It's all very digital and quite a sci-fi dystopian vision of the future, or the near future. So I wanted to try and give it a bit of warmth and a human element. So I did loads of found sound recordings to mix in with the more traditional stuff that you expect to hear. For example, like the game is, in the stealth segments there's a lot of ambience and sort of environmental noise going on, and a lot of those are actually source recordings taken from Sherwood Forest. Just the sound of the wind in the trees and everything from twigs snapping to leaves crunching, just kind of general environmental noise, kind of manipulated, tuned down, mixed in with various other elements and so on and so forth, just to give it like a real world quality. And I wanted to take that further in lots of the percussion. You think you're hearing a hi-hat, but it's actually suits of armour being tapped with chopsticks, for example. Some of the big metallic crashes that kind of signify the start of one of the action segments coming in when you've been spotted by a guard. It's actually the clashing of swords. It's actually someone who lives on my parents' road who does sort of old school, military reenactments and stuff like that. And I literally never met the guy before, but I've just always been aware of it because he's got this van outside his house, and you walk past and there's just suits of armour, swords, replica guns and stuff in the windows. You'd always walk past and just think, what is going on there? So I plucked up the nerve to actually knock on his door one day, just very politely kind of explained what I was doing and asked if it would be possible to jump in with my hand recorder and just get some field recordings done. So very fortuitous, but that's how it happened. That's the thing. I just wanted to create something which maybe gave a bit of sonic texture and maybe made you stop to listen twice to it, but it couldn't ever be too weird or too antagonistic to what you're expecting to hear. Otherwise, it will jack you out of the reality of the game. And that's obviously not something that you want to do. You can't distract the player from what's going on. You need to do the opposite. So, but just little touches like that, I hope maybe just gave it a bit more sonic interest than you usually expect to hear, and it maybe a bit more interesting to listen to, particularly on the actual soundtrack release. When I've had to go back retrospectively and try and make all of these loops and layers into standalone pieces which don't bore you to death while you listen to them. Hopefully that's like when it might come through, and people will notice that and it will make a bit of a difference. If not, then I added an extra 6 months onto my workload for no reason, but it was good fun, so why not?
Another pod has touched down. Let's get it.